Hi, BookTube. Welcome to another nonfiction review. So I didn't actually do The Summer of Steinbeck. Not in the spirit of things, right? Because the real reason that I picked today's book to read was really because the other nonfiction book that I have in progress is Keith Thomas's 800-page masterwork about English medieval and early modern religion, right? So I needed some light relief. Today we are reviewing Travels with Charley, In Search of America by John Steinbeck, published in 1962, 166 pages. That's the reason I chose it as well. I wanted something short, sweet, and what I felt would be less demanding, and it certainly was. Now, I want to draw everybody's attention. If you're in the US and you want a print copy of Travels with Charley, the US price, $7.70 for the paperback. That's a 45% reduction right now on Amazon. Otherwise, copies are pretty cheap to come by. They're plentiful. You can spend more. There are lots of interesting earlier editions of the book if that's what you're into. My copy was owned. I bought the ebook. I don't remember when. Probably early on when I started this channel. I probably, because I've always wanted to read Travels with Charley. I've wanted to read it since I was a teenager. Okay, talk about the things I wait to get around to doing. I would be poor company on a real road trip. If I had to go with John Steinbeck, he would have dumped me off somewhere probably on the second day because I would have shown how badly I travel. I'm the one in the family who always got carsick or had a bad headache. I always did something to mess up long, involved travel plans, right? But I like the idea of a road trip. I especially like the idea of a road trip with a very friendly dog. And so I wanted to read this for the vicarious experience. No idea why I didn't get to it sooner. There may be a few people who haven't heard of this title. So just in brief, in 1960, when John Steinbeck was 58 years old, and he was a critically established author, the great American man of letters, he decided he needed to get to know his country better. He had been trapped in offices and studies writing, and he needed to see the land again. So he took himself on a slow circuit that went from north, then to west, then to south, then to east, back up, starting and ending in New York. I'm going to quote from him now on pages 1 to 2. He says, "My plan was clear, concise, and reasonable, I think. For many years, I have traveled in many parts of the world. In America, I live in New York, or dip into Chicago or San Francisco. But New York is no more America than Paris is France or London is England. Thus, I discovered that I did not know my own country. I, an American writer, writing about America, was working from memory, and the memory is at best a faulty, warpy reservoir. I had not heard the speech of America, smelled the grass and trees and sewage, seen its hills and water, its color and quality of light. I knew the changes only from books and newspapers. But more than this, I had not felt the country for 25 years. In short, I was writing of something I did not know about, and it seems to me that in a so-called writer, this is criminal. My memories were distorted by 25 intervening years." We talk about the author, but you'll see how brief it is, because this is another one of those famous names where I think reading a biography is absolutely necessary to get a better sense of who this person was that wrote all the very great novels that he did. John Ernst Steinbeck, and his surname in the family was shortened from Gros Steinbeck. His paternal grandfather came to America, and that was his full surname. Steinbeck himself was born in 1902 in Salinas, California. Now, he studied English literature at Stanford University at Palo Alto, but he left without a degree in 1925. His family were extremely supportive of him. His father allowed him to live at home, even though he was married, and financed him throughout the 20s while he was trying to get his first novel published. His first novel was Cup of Gold, which came out in 1929. Now, I could have chosen dozens of pictures, and I could have made an entire video about Steinbeck's life. That is just how much life he lived. One of my favorite biographers, Parini, who wrote a fantastic biography of Gore Vidal, has also published a life story of Steinbeck. So in my description box, you're going to see a link to his book if you are interested, thinking it's about time you read a biography of Steinbeck. Parini also writes the introduction to the Penguin edition of Travels with Charley. So let's talk about the structure of the book. Of the text itself, there is an introduction, as I say, by Parini, because I read the Penguin edition. That takes up about 7%. You'll see me talking in percentages because I had a Kindle version and they did not want to do page numbers, which makes sense because Kindle pages they're what you make them, aren't they? They're not fixed as they are in a physical book. There are 4 parts, therefore, after the introduction. Part 1 is really about Steinbeck's preparations for the trip, and that is only 4% of the book. He gets, the things packed into his truck. It's quite an interesting thing how he got that truck fitted out. And then parts 2, 3, and 4, which are the rest of the book, they are the journey itself. And then the remaining 4% are a few resources, nothing too exciting. It's not a nonfiction book in that way. There's a dedication, there's some suggestions for further reading, a couple of pages of that, and then there is a short biography as well, in addition to the introduction, if you get the Penguin edition, and that's also written by Parini. Probably a nice little parentheses, a taster of what his larger biography will be like. Now, what is noteworthy? You've got to make allowances because Steinbeck is honest about this. He did not put together the book until he'd made the whole journey, returned to New York, and then he worked from notes that he had scribbled down at the end of each day's traveling, okay? So he didn't have a recording device to accurately capture what he said to other people or what they said back to him. So if there were conversations, you can be sure that they had to be reconstructed from memory. So you have to give allowance for that. Parini says here, after a brief visit to Chicago, where he, that is Steinbeck, reunited with Elaine, he set off by himself again, heading west through Wisconsin. Everywhere he went, he listened, asked questions when he found an opening, then listened again. Every night in a motel or huddled in Rocinante, that was his truck, he would reconstruct his day's journey, the landscapes witnessed, the people met, the incidents along the way. From these diary-like notes, he would reconstruct the book. So there is, with Travels with Charley, an open sort of unstructured travel log kind of feel to it. Very casual feeling, casual language used, as Steinbeck always does. What I will talk about, though, are some of the interesting characteristics of this book and give you a sense of whether or not Steinbeck met his objective to really get to know America again. He dislikes cities, right? If Steinbeck has to describe a city, he only really talks about how it's changed in ways that he's not happy with. And he doesn't spend a lot of time talking about cities or being in cities or talking to people who live in cities. He does write about getting or being lost several times. I sympathized. I mean, I would be bad. I would be even worse than Steinbeck. But I did think it was odd that he didn't edit out more of this and focus instead on what he did do and who he did speak to when he finally got where he wanted to be. He did not meet that many people, or at least he didn't record that he met that many people, I don't think. Many of the encounters were similar. They took place inside Steinbeck's refitted truck late in the day with a few drinks from the author's astounding stash of alcohol that he took with him and replenished along the way. And because of that, he mainly spent time with men who had the free time. They were either single, or if they were family men, they didn't have to be somewhere right then, so they could hang out with Steinbeck. Steinbeck's very good at describing the natural world, the landscapes he encounters, and the behavior of Charley and other animals, wild animals. But that's it. I think I have to be honest about that. I don't think he got as much observing and talking done as he might have intended to when he set out. And something happens as he makes his journey. So he starts in New York, he goes up to Maine. I'll put a map on screen, right? Goes up to Maine. Then he makes a journey west, very close to the Canadian border. He just kind of skims along, spends quite a bit of time in Montana. He very much liked Montana. And then as soon as he hits Washington State, he goes as far as Seattle, which he doesn't like. It's changed too much. So he says what you expect him to say. Then he turns south, and he doesn't mention Oregon. He goes straight to California, and I think he stops at San Francisco and mentions that. And then he goes down to Salinas, of course, where he was born, and he spends a little time there. But once he leaves Salinas and starts to head south and east, the whole enthusiasm and passion for the project, something loses energy. He has nothing to say about Arizona or New Mexico, even though he passes through them. He begins part 4 by bemoaning the fact that he's arrived in Texas and he's going to have to say something about Texas. And he spends then several pages informing his readers that Texas is really many different places, not something that entirely surprised me. But he just gives us his opinions about Texas, what he thinks about Texas. And apart from taking Charley to see a vet in Amarillo, and then there's 2% of the book that is devoted to a Thanksgiving weekend that he spends with his wife at the ranch belonging to some incredibly wealthy man in Texas, and all his land and his house. I have no idea where it was. That's Texas. That's how he covers Texas. If I were Texan, I would feel shortchanged. But there were other states who would feel worse than that, because after he leaves Texas, Steinbeck has absolutely nothing to say about the leg of his journey that takes him from New Orleans back up to New York. So, in other words, he travels through these states but says absolutely nothing about them. He travels through Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, West Virginia, and the southern part of Pennsylvania. Says nothing. He doesn't go down to Florida at all. I guess he didn't want to change the route. Maybe he wanted to get back for Christmas. I got the feeling that might have been his itinerary. But yeah, but it's weird because, he spends a lot of time in certain states like Maine and Montana. He clearly loves states that don't have a lot of big cities. That really appeals to him. So I don't know whether he just ran out of energy for the project itself, or was he deeply disturbed by what he saw in the South, because he admitted that he didn't know very much about American race relations. And he went down to New Orleans specifically to see the group of white housewives and mothers who gathered daily outside William Frantz Elementary School to scream obscenities at Ruby Bridges, the 6-year-old black girl who had to be escorted every day by federal marshals in and out of her elementary school, which had recently desegregated itself. And Steinbeck was clear that, what he'd read in newspapers or saw on television news reports was nothing like as shocking and nauseating as what he saw and heard when he was there face to face. And then subsequent to that, as he's leaving New Orleans, he picks up a couple of passengers and gives them lifts. One is white, one is black. They don't travel together, by the way. He first picks up the white passenger, then the black one. And the conversations are very upsetting for different reasons. And I think after those incidents, it just seems as though Steinbeck lost heart and we just don't get anything else. And I just wonder if he lost enthusiasm, if something about what happened to him in New Orleans just it took away his appetite for the project as a whole. So what can I say about the book in summary? Because Steinbeck is good at painting landscapes, he is very good. And he's also very good at creating character. Reading Travels with Charley is very engaging. So I wouldn't necessarily want anybody put off because I think, perhaps it isn't not very enjoyable to read. It is enjoyable to read, but it's a book that would only have been published because the author had a reputation that was strong enough to ensure good sales, in spite what really wasn't, he really didn't achieve what he set out to do. He achieved some of it. And you have to turn a blind eye to the fact that Steinbeck, for better or worse, this was just a casual travelogue that he kind of lost interest in about 2/3 of the way through. But otherwise, a really good read and a nice light relief. So if you are having heavy reading and you just think, give me a little relief, this is a lovely book to give you that sense of relief. Okay, everybody, that is the review done. I hope to see you again in a few days' time with a tag video. We are going to do the reading philosophy tag that Lecton has put up, because I just loved those 4 questions, and I spent a lot of time thinking about them and scripting that. So yeah, you're definitely getting that in a few days' time. In the meantime, hope September has got off to a reasonable start for everybody. I mean, kids are back at school. Maybe that will help some people with a little bit more free time for reading. Cross fingers, unless you're a teacher, in which case, oh dear, I guess you have to work it out some other way. Anyway, good luck to everybody, and I'll see you again in a few days' time. Take care. Bye-bye.